Hello and welcome to the round so far, brought to you by AAMI. I'm Riley Beveridge. This is Kane Cornes. Kane, it's been a seismic day in the race for top 4, top 8, for the premiership, for everything. We'll start with our big story, where Carlton fell just short of a dramatic comeback against Collingwood. Mitch McGovern with the chance to win the game after the siren kicks it out in the full.
Didn't they storm home the Blues from 32 points down, which we'll get to, and he sprays out. I mean, as much as you got sympathy for the player missing, he's got to be much better than that. Yeah. How you can miss that set shot by 10 metres, so the pressure got to him, whether it's a lack of technique, whether because he's a defender, he hasn't been practising his set shots, but in that moment, his technique failed, and it cost them potentially a top 4 spot, albeit there were some other big moments that the Blues will look back on and be regretful about.
Could potentially cost them a top 8 spot as well, pending next week's massive game against Hawthorn. Let's take a look at some of these last quarter moments, because the Blues found themselves 32 points down. It was, of course, Scott Pendlebury's 400th game. He dishes that one off to Jamie Elliott, and that puts the prize 32 points up. But then, as you mentioned, they came storming back, the last 5 goals of the game. Yeah,
look at Holland's goal there. There's some big moments here for the Blues players. Now, these two teams love it close, had the close one earlier on in the year, but some big performances. There's Owies, and he's one of the better celebrators in the game, and he thought, okay, here's the energy that this team needed, and they absolutely stormed home 5 in a row. Look at this kick. The centre ball from Motlop was magnificent to Martin, and he goes back and kick it. Then there's Akers here who steps up in a big moment. So Michael Voss spoke after the game, you got to win more of these big moments, and the Blues certainly did. They left their run late. There's Hollands, the brother, kicking a big one, and you think, oh my goodness, they're going to go down to the wire again. And we've seen the McGovern miss at the end. They did a lot right. Their pressure went absolutely through the roof. If you look at the last quarter numbers, +7 in entries. Their midfield stepped up, which has been well beaten in recent times, +7. 2 more scoring shots, and kicked the last 5 goals of the match after trailing by 32, as you said.
I reckon they'll have some regrets, particularly their first 8 scoring shots all behinds. Collingwood, this is probably the strongest team they've fielded all year, I reckon, and they started to get some of their ball movement back. Now, still out of the top 8 as things stand. Next week is going to be almost a mini elimination final against the Swans on the Friday night.
Sydney. Well, what does this remind you of? What does this look like? Yeah. This looks like 2023, doesn't it? Absolutely. Their defenders were amazing tonight, I thought, and for the last 2 weeks, their defence has really stepped up and they've helped each other out. Their intercept game was back. Darcy Moore, the captain, has led from the front. They kept Curnow goals for the first time in ages. Dacos doing what Dacos does with the finish there. And then it's out of the centre bounce. So they get their ball movement going from the back half, and then they got their centre bounce going as well. And Dacos is involved again as well too. Yeah, so I just thought there were aspects of the game where you thought this is more of the Collingwood that we know. Yeah. Now, there's a big injury, and that's Jordan De Goey, who looked like he's done a serious hammy. That from Hill there was unbelievable to Hoskin Elliott. He had some big moments, Bobby Hill, but that injury to De Goey, after they rushed him back, after he hasn't done much training with the groins, that could be a really costly one.
It's going to be huge next Friday night. One man who drove the Pies all night was Scott Pendlebury. In his 400th game, he became just the 6th player in VFL, AFL history to reach 400. Followed in the footsteps of Kevin Bartlett, Michael Tuck, Dustin Fletcher, Brent Harvey and Sean Burgoyne. And he's not slowing down. He was awesome tonight. So calm, so composed. He's one of the greats of the game, isn't he?
Look at his numbers. 27, 8 clearances. Look at the tackles there. This goal was nearly went through. That would have bought the 86,000, the house down at the MCG, and then
Is he
carried off.
best ever player?
Yes. Body of work. I don't think he's the best individual player. Like, his best isn't as good as Nathan Buckley's best, but the body of work, the longevity, the consistency, the record, unmatched at Collingwood.
He was absolutely fantastic again tonight. Congratulations to Scott Pendlebury. Just quickly on the Blues, because they've lost 4 of their last 5 now. Their only win in that stretch was against North Melbourne. They could be out of the 8 by the end of the weekend. I mean, next week they play Hawthorn on a Sunday. Hawthorn's got Richmond and West Coast to finish off, or Richmond and North Melbourne, to finish off the season. Carlton's got West Coast and St Kilda. They both should win their last 2. Next week becomes an elimination final for them. Do you have worries that they're just not going to get there now?
Well, do you?
I just worry about the state of this list now. It's just missing something, I think, to take it to that next level. They're a good football team. They have been for the last 2 or 3 years. They're not a great football team, and I worry about their ability to get there.
Yeah, they look banged up, there's no doubt, and their bottom 6 can become exposed, and their Chera injury's done his hammy again. That must be the 5th or 6th time that he's done that in the last few years, but he's form was poor anyway. Curno's form actually hasn't been that good. I mean, he's consistently kicked goals, but well beaten tonight. Ineffective. Harry Mackay was missing as well. They're so reliant on Wiedering and Cripps and Walsh. Once you drop away from that, then there's some serious issues. They do have a softer underbelly. Match them on ball, and then the game is yours because they are one pace through the midfield and they're far too reliant on so few.
That was a fantastic game of footy, but I don't think we've seen a more remarkable game of footy all season than what occurred at the Adelaide Oval, where Port Adelaide beat the top of the ladder Sydney Swans by 112 points. This was just extraordinary, all done in the first half.
I've watched a lot of Port Adelaide games in the last 20, 25 years, and this was as good as I've seen them play. So there's two stories here. Port Adelaide's football was as good a football as any team has played this year, and Horne-Francis was unbelievable, 27. I think he had 11 score involvements, which was the best on the ground, kicked a goal, but it was everyone. I mean, they were absolutely ruthless and relentless for 4 quarters. Their ability to shut down Sydney's ball movement, they didn't know what to do, Sydney. The amount of times they won the ball across half back, it was slow, it was wide, it was down the line. This is their first score. And that's their first score. With 10 minutes to go in the second term, it's 71-0. I mean, in the end, there were some goals, and you'll see this one here for Sweet, and there's others that it genuinely looked like a training drill. But yeah, what a performance. They gained 7 percentage points, which was crucial because their percentage was poor, and right now they're in second spot.
So these are the stats that mattered at half-time. You can have a look at that. They dominated in every single category, did the power. They led by 77 points as well. So incredible first half performance from them. It's Sydney's biggest loss since 1981. I can't remember a team ever winning a premiership having lost by 100 points in the same season. They've been the flag favourite for so long. They're no longer the flag favourite. Brisbane moving into premiership favouritism tonight. It was an incredible game.
They've lost 4 out of their last 5, and that only win was against North Melbourne. So it's the same as Carlton. And teams at this stage of the year, if you're in poor form, and this is poor form, you're not getting to the last day in September. So there's some real concerns about that. And you're right, 112-point loss against a side that had been going okay, but hadn't been setting the world on fire, Port Adelaide. Their defence is undersized and undermanned. Port Adelaide took 22 marks inside forward, 50-4. So they had their way with the defensive unit. The midfielders dropped off. Warner nowhere to be seen again tonight, 14 touches after 11 last week. Heaney certainly dropped off. Goulden is okay, but he looks to be looking for stats more than them doing the damage, and their key forwards can't get near it. So they got some serious concerns. Maybe John Longmire's biggest test since he's been coach of this footy club.
Next Friday night against Collingwood is going to be massive. Now, for so long throughout his tenure, Ken Hinkley has been known as bottom 10 Ken, as getting the wins against the bad sides. But this year, and in particular over the last month, they're beating the best sides in the competition. They could be a threat come finals time.
Yeah, I've beaten some good sides this year. I mean, you can chuck Essendon in there, and Essendon look like a better side than what they are now. They've beaten Hawthorn, who are the hottest team in it right now. So, look, their record really stacks up against the best in it. Amazing that the Port Adelaide fans were booing him only in round 16 against Brisbane. Like, it's genuinely embarrassing. I feel embarrassed for those supporters who went there on that day and booed him and then turn up tonight and cheer. It's amazing. So, look, I think, I'm a fan, but I think he's been pretty resilient. The next game 100%. Against St Kilda after Brisbane, he's almost in tears, and it almost got the better of him. But as his players always do, they don't give up on him. I don't know what the future holds, but it's amazing that they've maintained touch and there's still a chance to finish top 4.
It's pretty incredible when you think about it that 2 top 4 sides at the moment in the Western Bulldogs and Port Adelaide, both coaches under the microscope halfway through the year, potentially getting sacked.
Sam Mitchell was at the start of the year 0-5. Chris Fagan, absolutely. People calling for him to be removed this year as well, and there's some questions over that. So it's just one of those bizarre, crazy seasons where the fittest team, the team with the smallest injury list, and those that are playing the best come this time of the year are those that are going to be right up there.
Let's get to GMHBA Stadium now, where Geelong only just held on against Adelaide. Here are some of the last quarter moments, because the Crows seem to have this game...
Don't do that, Riley. Don't shush the crowd. Don't give me the where's the noise. That never works.
In their control.
That is karma, because in the end it came back to backfire. But in the third quarter, Adelaide were unbelievable. The back end of the third quarter, I thought they kicked a number of out-the-back goals and got in behind the Geelong defence. There's Lawson Humphries, who's been such a great pickup for them. Another one, and this is the story of it. That's Jeremy Cameron's 6th goal that he kicks with that mark. He had the Murray matchup, which we'll get to shortly, and he completely exposed him. So if not for Jeremy Cameron, there is no way Geelong win this game of footy, because Adelaide were really good. Rochelle kicks this goal with 20-odd seconds to go in the last quarter, and Adelaide had one last chance from the centre bounce. But Geelong hold on. They're not convincing at all. But which side in it is convincing? And at one point, when Adelaide hit the front, Geelong dropped right down out of the 8. So they've kept their top 4 hopes alive, but only just.
We saw Jeremy Cameron kick his 6th goal there. He is our Saturday star today. So he kicked 6 goals from 17 disposals and 8 marks. There's just been signs, I reckon, over the last 6 weeks. He had a pretty quiet patch midway through the year, but there's been signs over the last 6 weeks that he's getting back to his best.
Look at Murray on Cameron here. Like, Matthew Nicks has had a poor year. There's no doubt about that, as has the Adelaide Footy Club, but he just got this matchup completely wrong. So Murray is not fast enough. He's not mobile enough. He's not agile enough to go with Jeremy Cameron. And that's when he's at full health. He's coming off an ACL, and Matthew Nicks is asking Nick Murray to go everywhere with Jeremy Cameron. So watch how many times he gets in behind the back of Murray. Came up the ground and then got back in behind him and kicked 6 almost walking goals. So they completely got that matchup wrong. Yeah. Even Michael Laney would have been a better matchup. He wouldn't have had the height and the size to go with Jeremy Cameron, but he would have had the endurance and the mobility to go with him. All of those Cameron goals, Murray was 10 to 15 metres off him. So Matthew Nicks completely got that matchup wrong.
Some nervous moments for Geelong late in this one where Sam de Koning went off with a pretty innocuous knee injury, and you don't like seeing this, the change of direction one. He's so important to them. You just hope for the best when it comes to the scans tomorrow.
I think the positive update was that Chris Scott said he could have come back on late, and they were cautious with that. So you can see that knee is strapped there, but you're right. When that buckles and there's no contact, you think the worst, and that's the last thing they would have needed, because he was doing a pretty good job. They did hold Adelaide's key forwards pretty well. Yeah. Fogarty was well held. Walker kicked 2 goals early, but nothing after that, and Phil Thorpe looked the most dangerous. But Geelong's defence, after having a talking to at half-time, because Chris Scott said they're just marking the ball too much inside their forward 50, they responded pretty well.
Let's get to Friday night footy now at Marvel Stadium, where the Western Bulldogs easily accounted for Melbourne. I tell you what, talk about dangerous teams in finals. This Western Bulldogs side looks like it could be a threat.
Amazing. Plus 44 in handball received. So this is the vision we're showing here. Their forward handball, their metres gained by handball has been just a standout. And they got speed across the board, don't they? I mean, I've always said this year, this squad is as talented as any squad in it, and it was bizarre the way that they started the season with a squad as talented as this. Now it is all coming together, and you can see the confidence that they're playing with. So to beat Carlton like they did, to go to Geelong and beat Geelong down there, to go to Sydney and beat Sydney, and yes, Melbourne, it was their weakest side for the year and they've been smashed by injury, but it was the way they did it and the way that they're starting games. They have the opposition completely almost beaten 10 minutes into the game. That's what happened. Melbourne, this was game over 10 minutes into the game. And that's probably been the case against Geelong and against Sydney as well. So there's something in the way that they have started. But right now with Brisbane and Hawthorn, this is the best team in football.
And they could look primed to do something they've never done under Luke Beveridge, which is finish in the top 4 and give them the best chance of going on and winning the premiership. And Marcus Bontempelli and Adam Treloar, are they the best 1-2 punch in the midfield at the moment in the competition?
Hard to go past it. That's the best player in the competition. So there's a start for you, and probably has been for some time now. Look at those numbers from the 2 of them. But it's not just the numbers. Like, Treloar has always got big numbers. Like, he's stat padded for years, but it's the damage that he's doing in game 250. He's in all-Australian form. I thought Libba did some amazing stuff inside, and then Libba to Bont to Treloar a little bit more on the outside was enormous once again. And how poor did Melbourne's midfield look? Like, Oliver is just a shell of himself, clearly not fit enough to be playing at the level, looks heavy. Viney can't get near it. Cozzy Pickett they try and put on ball, but for the amount of talent that he has, he just doesn't impact games enough, and he was completely missing. They had to bring Sparrow back after he was dropped. He was okay, but yeah, they got absolutely smashed, and Treloar and Bont were a key part of that.
They've got some issues, the D's, and they've had issues since halfway through the year. So this is their last 12 games. They're 4-8 in that stretch, and in so many key statistical categories, they're just among the worst teams in the competition.
Yeah, so big decisions to make at the end of the year. So he just needs to shut it down. So what Geelong did last year, where they put their players who needed it in for surgery early to give them the best chance of recovery and the best chance of having a long pre-season. Oliver needs the biggest and longest pre-season he's ever had. So fix up his hand or whatever is going on there. Fix up Max Gawn. It's cruel the way that they're forcing Max Gawn to play because they don't have any other options for him. I don't know about Viney and what is going on there, but there's a number of players that are clearly affected by injury. They've already lost Petrarca, so yeah, I think they need to shut this season down, get their players fixed and come back for a big pre-season, because the heat's going to be on that footy club next year.
It certainly is. Let's get to our AAMI clangers now. Who covers clangers? AAMI does. You hate doing this game, but Tom McDonald just had a night to forget. He was angry the entire night.
He couldn't do anything right. And I understand the frustration there. That's one of the worst free kicks I've seen this year. That is not a free kick. That's a legitimate spoil. What happened to the descent rule? That guy, he could have given away 550. I don't know what, but this one, I don't know what he's complaining. Oh, look at this. He just chucks Cody Waitman to the ground like wrestling style, as if that's not going to be a free kick. And then he takes a mark finally, and someone else gave the free kick away, so he had to hand it back. Just one of those nights.
It certainly was. Unlucky for Tom McDonald. Let's stay at Marvel Stadium now. Saturday afternoon footy where North Melbourne got the job done against Richmond, a battle of 17th against 18th. They just had too much star power. So Nick Larkey, Luke Davies-Uniacke and Harry Sheasel, the three best players on the ground, they were too much for Richmond.
And this is what we're highlighting here. So Luke Davies-Uniacke has been in a rich vein of form. He went forward and kicked 3 goals. He doesn't do that. In fact, that's career best for him. And this, the silver service from Sherry, who's been one of the best ruckmen in the competition this year, and the finish. So this was the difference in the game. Richmond came home hard. I thought North Melbourne's ball use out of their back half completely deserted them, and the ball just lived inside Richmond's forward half late in the game. But these are the names. So Larkey kicks 5. Sheasel's just been pure class all year, and LDU is one of the more explosive and damaging midfielders in football right now.
It's going to be an interesting off-season for the Tigers because we know they're probably going to have pick 1 now. They're a game and percentage behind North Melbourne in 18th on the ladder. So they'll have pick 1. They might get some picks in for Dan Rioli. They might get some picks in for Liam Baker. They might get some picks in for Shea Bolton. It's going to be a massive off-season.
Yeah, how confronting for them that they've invested so heavily in this midfield, and it was an experienced midfield. It wasn't a young one. Nankervis played, Prestia played, Hopper played, Taranto played. They all played, Graham played, and they got completely smashed through the midfield from a younger group and a more hungry and more talented group. So they've got to really address. Clearly, they made errors giving up 4 first-round draft picks for Hopper and Taranto and paying as much for them as they did, because those two just butchered the ball again today, and North Melbourne destroyed them from inside to outside. So what you're saying is it's a great opportunity for them, but they've got to make some pretty shrewd decisions at the end of the year.
They certainly do. Let's get to our moment of the round now, and it came from Zane Dersma, one of those early picks that North Melbourne got in over the last couple of years. Have a look at this grab. Is it better than Jamie Elliott's? Does it win mark of the year?
I actually think it is. Because I think it's a longer run-up, and I think it's more spectacular with the height. Now, he didn't quite get as good a sit, but the level of difficulty was more severe, I reckon.
Yeah.
So, and that's not going to be the last one he takes.
Oh, he gets up. He certainly does.
He took another one earlier on in the game where he just floated across the front of the pack. That's his real strength. He's going to be a serious player, I reckon. He's playing a difficult position in a poor side. I'd love to see him be that Christian Petrarca, maybe centre forward player in time where he can actually go centre bounce forward and sit on heads and be a must-watch player over the next 10 years.
Yeah, he's shown some signs this year, Zane Dersma. Looks very good. Let's get to Optus Stadium now, where West Coast beat Gold Coast and continued this remarkable run of away defeats for the Suns. They were 15 points down. So have a look at this. Jake Waterman kicks his goal just before three-quarter time. They're 15 points down at that stage. But then they look like the side that had more to play for in the last quarter.
Yeah, and this is what we're highlighting here. So the pressure and the intensity, we hadn't seen much of this from West Coast for the last 3 years. I mean, they've done it sporadically this season, certainly, and they've certainly done this at home, and they've been a difficult opponent to play against at times. But how good is this? I mean, the crowd would just be loving this. So for Jared Schofield to get his first win, there's the match winner, or the one that puts them in front there, from Duggan with 3 minutes to go, and then they hang on. Cripps is really clever with his finish, but yeah, I mean, the ability to finish late in these key moments is similar to the Carlton game as well, with not as high a stakes. But look at the crowd, they always turn up. I think they're the best fans in football. They've turned up regardless of where the team has been on the ladder, but a great relief for Jared Schofield to get that win.
What about for Damien Hardwick, though? Still haven't won a game on the road all year. Have a look at this. This is Champion Data's fixture rating at the start of the season. So this goes from hardest to easiest. Easiest draw in the entire competition. They play Richmond twice. They play West Coast twice. They play North Melbourne twice. You couldn't have been gifted more this season, and they're not going to make finals. Yeah,
no, I laugh at this footy club, and I have done for the majority of this year. Because I said maybe 3 weeks ago right here that Stewie Dew would be laughing at this club. I said they're the least serious team in football, and nothing that I've seen this year has persuaded me against that opinion, because I thought they were certainties to make the 8. With the list that they've got, with a premiership coach, with a core group of players that are now 23, 24, played a lot of football together, and this is what they've delivered. Losses against one of the worst teams in West Coast that we've seen this century are unbelievably disappointing. And with Adelaide, that is the most disappointing team this year, Gold Coast and Adelaide.
It certainly is. All right, let's get to the ladder now, and it's all heating up in terms of the ladder. You can see Sydney just holding on, but all of a sudden they're only a game clear of Port Adelaide in second, and beyond that it gets so tight. So you look at the Bulldogs, Carlton, the Giants, Hawthorn in 9th position. There's going to be so many elimination finals played between now and the end of the year.
Exactly right, because a lot of these teams play against each other. There's the bottom half of the 8. Clearly, this Hawthorn Giants game tomorrow is just enormous. Massive. You mentioned Collingwood and Sydney next week. Port Adelaide and Fremantle play against each other in a couple of weeks. Collingwood and Brisbane play against each other. We've got the Bulldogs and the Giants in round 24. So these are the games that are still to come tomorrow. Clearly, that game there at the top, the early one, the Giants and Hawthorn in the Greater Western Sydney, is the biggest of those. But I don't think it's going to be an easy one for Fremantle either at the MCG, with the way that Essendon have been absolutely smashed and criticised this week. There'll be a response.
Completely agree. There's going to be some interesting contests on Sunday. Thanks for your time, Kane. Thanks for watching. See you next week.
For the best and most comprehensive wrap of each round, Access All Areas is the show for you. Unpacking all the action and dissecting the big news from each round. Access All Areas thanks to Crypto.com, Mondays on AFL.com.au and the AFL Live app.